today's lesson is going to be a very important one, and it's on art criticism. So many of y'all are going to be asking, what exactly is art criticism? Well, boiled down, it is the process of giving constructive feedback to an artist as well as interpreting artwork. So critiques will come often and need to be well thought out for it to have any meaning. So that's what's going to happen in class. We're going to critique ourselves, but we're also going to critique our classmates. So learning to interpret art as well as give feedback will help you grow as an artist, and it'll help you think critically about the images you're presented with every day. So it's very important that you learn how to critique artwork in the proper sense. So the kind of connection to everyday life, when I say think critically about the images you're presented with every day, I'm going to use this since this is an election year, but you'll see it pretty much every election year. Think about it this way. If you're watching TV and a political ad comes on, what are the most typical symbols used in the background? If you think about Arkansas, whenever we have a political ad come on, 9 times out of 10, that person's on a farm or showing them talking to people in a poor or middle-class neighborhood. You also see most likely the Arkansas flag and the United States flag. What are the main colors used? Well, there's the big one there that I just mentioned. You'll often see red, white, and blue, especially on flags for presidential, especially on the stages and ads for presidential campaigns. You will see the American flag everywhere. Everything will be subtly coated in red, white, and blue during a presidential race. All of these visual elements are there to influence you psychologically. So, and if you know about them, then the effect is lessened. It's better to know about them so you just don't fall for cheap artist tricks than to, just fall for cheap artist tricks. People do get paid to actually create these sets, and artists, knowing how colors affect people, how symbols work and everything else, they can subtly place these into ads and make you either want to buy something or make you hungry, anything of that nature. So it's better to know it than to not know it. So that's why we're mainly working over art criticism. So where do I start? This is a kind of a biggie here because most people have trouble starting critiques. So starting a critique can feel daunting, especially if the artist is in the room. Sometimes we're going to worry about offending them. Sometimes we worry about embarrassing ourselves. Just feel like we say something stupid. Either way, it can make it hard to even know where to start. Well, I'm going to give you some tips on how I typically start it. Sometimes it takes a minute for critiques to get going, but once they do, they typically flow, and everybody gets kind of into a flow if we do it in a group. So the best way to start is getting what is called a cold read of the artwork. So basically, look at it. One of the better ways I suggest it is like closing your eyes for a minute, don't look at it, clear your head, open your eyes, and what's the first impression that you get? Does it make you think about something or make you feel an emotion? If it does, then what about the artwork makes you feel that way? So say you're looking at a painting from Picasso's Blue Period. All the figures in his Blue Period are slumped over, they're huddled, they're also all blue. They're very cold blue, something it's not relaxing at all. It's a very sad set of paintings. The color blue can make you feel depressed, and at the time Picasso was very depressed. A good friend of his died, and that's when he started his Blue Period paintings. So that's how he was expressing his personal emotion, is through that work. So after you start there, you can look for the elements of art and principles of design. So questions you can ask yourself can be, how did the artist use line? Did they use it well, or could it be better? Is the piece balanced? Does it feel like it's like weighted to one side, or is it pretty equal? What is the artist trying to emphasize? And that can lead into the next question here. Whatever the artist is trying to emphasize, that will basically be your subject. So once you determine what the subject is, you need to start looking a little deeper to then interpret the actual subject. Most artists don't leave it at surface level. They'll start with subject and then they go down to more of an actual subject, kind of like the secret subject, something you're supposed to figure out about the work. So let's scroll down a little bit. So, actual subject. I know that sounds weird, but artists don't often work on surface level alone. We're going to look at this Kehinde Wiley work here. It's going too far. Okay, there we go. It's a portrait of LL Cool J. On the surface, it's a portrait. Not much to it. It looks like LL Cool J. It creates an air around him that leads to a status as a rapper. You can tell he's an experienced musician. But if you know anything about Kehinde Wiley's work, you can start looking deeper to more of his actual subject. So, Kehinde Wiley is an African-American artist who predominantly, he may have something of people of European descent or Hispanic descent, but mainly he's predominantly people of African descent when he paints. But he's extremely and heavily influenced by European paintings. Now, European painting style basically means the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th century of art, where you see the people in the white wigs on the horses, in the parlors, at tea parties, things of that nature. That is that European style that he was heavily influenced by. But there is a lack of people of color in those paintings. If there is a person of color in there, they are typically someone of a mythos, someone in a play, or a character, or a servant. They're not really the focus of that painting. So he takes his subjects, which are people of African descent, and he puts them in more of the settings of European paintings. Now, if we look here, this background here, this is very, very 19th century. That kind of French brocade pattern in the background. The chair is very European style. LL Cool J himself is sitting with the authority of a nobleman. So the big thing is he also uses weird colors to just kind of make his paintings a little bit more contemporary, a little bit new. He doesn't want to copy the old masters. He takes influence from them. So the subject is LL Cool J. But in the series where he does these celebrity portraits and these portraits of people of African descent, it is the actual subject is people of color in place of in a European style painting, just to kind of make some form of representation in European style painting. So that's what the actual subject is. Now, the thing is, with that, you would have to really know about Kehinde Wiley to really study this deeper like that. But some people, that's what critiques and artist statements are often for. You would read that, you would listen to an artist speak about it, and then you would make your interpretations from there. It's better to look at it first to critique it, and then listen to the artist statement to see, if you caught what they meant. And then once you do, a lot of stuff typically falls more into place. but it's better to start on your own and then work from there, because your own interpretation could be completely different than what the artist intended. Now, this is just one example of this. I will try and bring out practice examples for you to interpret artwork as well. So, and in your sketchbook, there's also a page that you will need to fill out for work about actual subject. You will be determining the actual subject of a photograph that I have in there. So, but this isn't a free-for-all. As we critique our work, the work of professional artists, and even ourselves, there are some lines we don't cross. Critiques are meant to be a civilized affair. Now, even in the art world, critiques are meant to be constructive. You are meant to be building people up. While it doesn't mean a critique is always positive, it doesn't mean it's always negative either. There are some critique methods that we will use to help balance this out. But before that, I'm going to address this with all my students, all my classes. There is an etiquette to these things. I've seen people just be completely and unnecessarily... I need to change that. That is an awful typo. So just completely and unnecessarily mean to one another during critiques. And that's not going to happen in my class. Y'all are not going to be unnecessarily mean to one another about everybody's artwork. And you're not going to tear someone down. I'm not going to allow it. Critiques at times can be harsh. You're kind of in a vulnerable place when you're presenting your work. You're kind of bearing your soul. Some artists see it as bearing their soul. Beginning artists sometimes see it as, well, I'm not that good. You know, people are going to judge me. It's a very vulnerable time. You have to be accepting to critique, but at the same time, you can also defend your work as well. And the thing is, it just has to be civilized. Somebody can't just go in to hurt you. You need to be open to saying, well, this is what I wanted to fix. Or this is what I didn't like. Or, well, this is what I was going for instead of what you said. You know, it has to be civilized. You can't tear each other down. We're not competing in my classroom. Normally when critiques are harsh, it is from a competing artist because they're trying to, you know, compete with them. They're trying to compete for business. If you give a negative critique, you must back it up with valid reasons and do it in a way that builds up your classmate rather than break them down. You should never just look at a painting and say, that just is terrible. No. Or point and laugh. That's even worse. Don't do that. You have to back it up. You have to look at it and go, well, your balance did well. You balanced it well, but I feel like you could have added more color. That's more of a valid critique. Or, your use of line is excellent, but you could have made the proportion a little bit better. You'll use a lot of those elements and principles terms in during critiques. Or, I really like how you did this, but what if you did this again instead? It's a lot of, you know, I like this, but what if statements. Or, I like how you did this. Why did you choose? Why did you choose to do it this way? That's another good way to do a critique. The best thing to do is just ask questions about the work and be prepared to answer them. When you make thumbnails in class, that will help you immensely because you have already planned it out and you'll already have all the answers to those questions. If you're not sure, you can just say, I never thought of that. Let me think on that a little while and I'll get back to you. That's a valid answer. So, because sometimes people interpret your work different than what you intended. Intent in art is also a big deal too. I will teach you kind of how to render that and get your point across a lot better. So, critiques are not going to be used to tear people down. Critiques are going to be used to build your classmates up, as well as you. So, like in art, critiques must be balanced out. It's good to follow the sandwich method. Now, this is one that I kind of personally like. It opens up the person to critique, and then it closes on a good note. That's the way I see it. You start with a positive thing. I like this. I think that such and such could be improved, but in contrast to that, you also did this really well. That's pretty much the example. You start what you like, go what you think can be improved, and then end with another positive critique. So you open the person up, give them the critique, and then you close it out on good terms, with a good basically with a good ending. So that's probably the best way to work about critiques, because it's less hostile, and it also makes you feel a little bit more comfortable following that format. That's one section, but as we go along, you'll find that critiques become easier and easier and easier as you work about them. It's not that bad. Eventually, artists start craving critiques, especially when they get out of school, out of like college and such, and they get into working professionally, and they don't get critiqued as often as they used to. So they'll often go into residencies where they work with other artists, and they'll be like, critique me. They want that feedback. They eventually crave that feedback. So once you learn how to do this, it actually becomes it becomes easier, and it becomes something that you will rely on more often. It's very good. It's something very good for your art and for you. So we will do practice critiques on professional artists before we tackle ourselves. We will be critiquing one of our first works. I will have that listed out on your syllabus. Just make sure you pay attention to that. We'll be doing them online via the computer, because it will take less time. I've done critiques with 15 to 20 kids in a class, and it took all week. I don't want to spend all week critiquing. So we will do it online. I will get pictures of all your work, and then I will be monitoring those critiques and giving you a grade for your quality of critiques and basically your input. So be prepared for that coming up. And soon I will see you in the next video.